Hey Vern, on this week's Comedy Timeline, we're talking about the Ernest movies. Hey, where do you think you're going? Where do you think you're going? Stick around, this is going to be good. I'm going to take all these movies that aren't meant to go together in any way, shape, or form, and I'm going to put them together, and I'm going to try and keep my sanity while I do it.
So the life of Ernest P. Worrell actually began way before his film series, in probably about 500,000 television commercials. He made his first big screen appearance in a movie called Dr. Otto and the Riddle of the Gloom Beam. It's mostly Jim Varney in this one, although Ernest does show up. He's not the main character, so I'm not including it as a part of the regular film series. It's not technically in continuity, and it's basically just the character's first movie appearance. 1 year later, we got our first proper Ernest film with 1987's Ernest Goes to Camp, which starts many lifetimes ago with a Native American initiation, then bounces to modern times to introduce Ernest P. Worrell and Camp Kikiki. The camp is selected to host some juvenile delinquents called Second Chancers, and I guess they're tough guys or something? They get into trouble, so they make Ernest a counselor to watch over them. But then, oh no! Trader Industries wants to destroy the camp! And they've employed both Dean Wormer and the Destroyer to do it. There's a bunch of shenanigans which mostly involve Ernest getting injured somehow, or at least humiliated. And back here he has this calendar up, and I was able to research it to find out that it's a 1986 calendar, so that's our year for this one. When Crater tricks Ernest into helping him trick the chief, they have to close the camp, and he gets beat up. And man, I don't actually remember people wearing half shirts in the 1980s, but I guess they must have. Ernest gets a musical number, and then of course there's a montage as they get revenge, as they make this war wagon thing in like a day. The kids shoot flaming arrows at people because, I mean, there's no way that could have gone wrong and injured or killed people. And then Jesus, they fired burning projectiles into explosives, detonating while the workers are nearby.
You know, a little like terrorism.
Look at this. How was no one killed here? Alzado levels the camp with a bulldozer, and I mean, if it was that easy, what the hell did they need all the explosions for? It took them like 5 minutes. Ernest saves the day by blowing up the bulldozer with Bronx still in it because we're cheering attempted murder now. And when Curtis Mooney tries to shoot him, nothing happens because native magic. And the camp is saved! Even though we basically saw it leveled 5 minutes ago. Well, everyone loved the guy, so 1 year later we got 1988's Ernest Saves Christmas. It starts on December 23rd with Santa, and Ernest is now a cab driver. Santa's passport says he was born in 1837. Jake the chef is here too, but he's an airport employee named Chuck. So I assume he's a new character, and he has a new sidekick named Bobby. This invoice here is pretty faint, but I'm pretty sure it says 1988, so we'd be set in real time and 2.5 years after the last one. There's no real reason that this can't be in continuity with the last one since it's not summer, so there's no reason for Ernest to be at the camp. And then Santa's seeking Joe here with the help of Police Academy's Mrs. Feldman. And there's the first film mention of Vern. And Santa gets arrested and his mugshot tells us for sure that it's 88. Santa also says that he's 151 years old, which lines up with being born in 1837. Ernest dons a disguise, and this is the first time that we've seen him without a hat. Although this is, a little creepy. He also disguises himself as an old woman, and then a snake wrangler, and then a couple of elves show up with birth dates at 1213 and 1246, making them over 700 years old each. Ernest flies some reindeer, and then Joe is turned into the new Santa Claus, and the sleigh is returned just in time, and everything wraps up nicely for everyone. Ernest took a 2-year break and returned in 1990's Ernest Goes to Jail, once again directed by John Cherry. Chuck and Bobby are back with the same names, but they're security guards now, and Ernest is now a janitor. I guess it's possible that it's new continuity again and each Ernest film exists in its own universe, but It's also pretty easy so far to keep this in the same timeline, with Ernest just getting a new job, and the same for Chuck and Bobby. So Ernest gets electrocuted and for some reason now attracts metal? Meanwhile in prison, Leonard Smalls teams up with the mysterious Mr. Nash, and the hell what kind of washing machine is this? I mean, look, I know it's a joke, but
Why would a washing machine have a puree setting?
we recently saw the warden helping out John Rambo, and between his dog Rimshot and the gadgety apartment, it looks like Ernest has been watching Pee-wee's Big Adventure recently. He gets jury duty, but turns out that Nash looks exactly like Ernest, so they switch them, so he ends up in jail. And is that the guard uniform?
So when they get the job and they show up for their first day and they're given that uniform to wear, I wonder what their reaction is.
Ernest attempts dressing up as Aunt Nelda again, but it turns out that Nash had the death penalty, so Ernest gets electrocuted. He doesn't die though, and instead becomes an Electro-Frankenstein magnet Ernest with lightning hands.
It's complicated.
He's saved by Lyle while Nash robs the bank, and there's a face-off with yet another electrocution, which somehow makes Ernest fly. They safely detonate the bomb, knock out Nash, and it just kinda ends. Anyway, there's no visible date in this one, but Real-Time 90 makes sense. 1 year later, 1991's Ernest Scared Stupid debuted, and it kicks off long ago, and we see townsfolk bury a child-stealing troll who curses Ernest's family. We bounce to more modern times, and we learn that the curse makes the Worrell bloodline dumber and dumber. Rimshot's back, and Ernest is a garbage man now, and we meet little Kenny and Elizabeth and Joey. And is this Agra?
Any Dark Crystal fans out there?
There's a brief Nelda appearance, and Ernest awakens the troll. Old Lady Hackamore gets really worried about the troll getting released, so I guess for some reason she tells Ernest how to wake him up. He, of course, then does this. I mean, if Hackamore was so worried about the troll, I don't know, maybe don't tell Ernest the method. It's like she wanted the troll to come back.
So like if I didn't want you to rob me, like I probably wouldn't tell you where I keep my money and like what the combination of my safe is, because like I wouldn't want you to rob me.
Trantor is actually a pretty awesome practical effect and turns Joey into a wooden doll. And when Ernest runs through town, there's election posters up letting us know that it's 1991, so we're set in real time and 1 year after the last one. So presumably, he'd lost the bank job and started a new gig in between them. And then Bobby's back with his brother Tom, who's not Chuck, and he's also got a new job. Chuck and Bobby were supposed to be brothers, so Tom here must be a previously unseen other brother, and Bobby went to work with him. On Halloween night, he starts collecting all the kids, while Ernest gets fired, and Elizabeth tells her mom she hates her, like, you know, kids do. And her mom says,
"Well, I'm not too fond of you either."
Wow, that is some pretty solid parenting right there.
Rimshot gets dolled up, and they figure out that the troll's weakness is milk, but Trantor completes his mission and awakens more trolls. I've pointed this out before, but several of the troll outfits were originally utilized for the killer clowns, although they're fairly well altered. There's a big fight with the townspeople, and the kids blast them with milk-filled super soakers, and geez, they even die like the killer clowns. Trantor mutates into a super troll impervious to milk, and he makes Kenny a doll, but Ernest realizes that the only way to stop him is to give him unconditional love, which, if you are curious what that means, it means pick something up and hug it, I guess. Everyone is restored, even the kids from long ago, which I guess is a happy ending, except everyone else in their family and everyone they ever knew is long dead, and they're now trapped in a future world that they couldn't possibly understand. But it's all good, I guess! There was a 2-year gap until 1993's Ernest Rides Again, no longer released by Touchstone due to the sharp box office drop-off of Scared Stupid. When Ernest discovers an artifact, he takes it to Professor Mellon, who works at the college Ernest is now a janitor at, so he no longer has the garbage man job, I guess. His discovery seems to be a part of an ancient canon that contains the real crown jewels, or something. They discover it underground in these conveniently lit catacombs. I mean, where is this light even coming from? They're double-crossed, and Nelda's back. And oh man, hey, is that license plate really artifacts? Mellon's wife and these two oddball salesmen, who I guess are this movie's version of the Chuck and Bobby kind of characters who are both absent from this entry, try to help out to recover the jewels.
Ew, don't do that, movie. That's...
Ernest eventually fires the cannon and locates the jewels while being chased by both the evil collectors and a group of British agents. The crown gets stuck on Ernest's head, and there's a big final chase scene where Mellon saves his life and gets the crown off. There's no visible date in this one, but most of the films have been set in real time, and this one doesn't seem to be any different, so we'll put it in 93. This entry made a mere $1.5 million at the box office, a huge bomb, and was the final Ernest film that released on the big screen. One short year later, and Ernest returns in Ernest Goes to School, the first direct-to-video entry and the only Ernest movie to not be directed by John Cherry. He's still working as a janitor, but now he's at a high school, so it's yet another new job. The school year is underway and it's football season, so it's probably late fall or so. There's some sort of rule that all the employees must graduate, or they'll have to close the whole school?
Okay.
So Ernest has to go back to school.
It's in the title.
Oh hey, Bobby's back, and Mrs. Mellon as well, but I'm assuming that they're new characters, although Bobby's name is still Bobby. He's picked on by baby Will Sasso and has to wrestle for gym class, and they have a wrestling ring. I mean, I guess this high school apparently has an, pro wrestling program instead of, like a high school wrestling program like everyone else.
I mean, have they ever even seen high school wrestling?
He falls in love with Miss Flugel and he's bullied. These kids set his head on fire and then club him in the head with a fire extinguisher in front of a teacher and the whole class, and I guess they're not punished or have charges pressed against them or anything. And then they tried an experiment on Ernest to increase his intelligence, but it only works for around an hour. He excels and, oh man, look at Morty's mom as a teenager. Ernest kind of becomes a dick, and then the bullies discover his secret. And then there's a football poster from 91 up here, but I'm thinking it's from a previous season. The bullies sabotage the experiment, so he's dumb again, and when the coach tries to throw the big game, the band drug them and take their place, including Elliot. And then they, cheat by using the experiment to boost Ernest into the game, and then boost everyone, but Ernest swears off, so he has to win on his own.
So let me get this straight. If you cheat for the entire game, but then on the very last play of the game, you don't cheat, it's all good?
They win and save the school, and we're still rolling with real time, so it's 94 here. One more year later, we get 1995's Slam Dunk Ernest, the only film in the series to not begin with the word Ernest. It starts in 1964 with young Ernest and then bounces to modern times with Spider/Demon here. Ernest is working at a mall now, and this poster lets us know that we're set in 95, so once again back to real time. It looks like spring, so I guess he lost his high school job sometime in the past couple of months or so.
His resume must be pretty long. Dozens and dozens of jobs, but all of them only for about 9 months to a year.
There's this poster behind him, which is for a store opening in March 95, so we're pre-March 95, and then the basketball tournament seems to be set in November, so we're probably in November of 94, which means that Ernest Goes to School would most likely be set in 1993, and Ernest Rides Again would be back to 1992. Ernest gets on the ball team, but as a bench warmer, and then the Archangel of Basketball appears, and it's Roger Murdoch. He gives Ernest these magic shoes, and hey, whatever happened to Rimshot?
Was he put down?
So he starts playing and doing well because, well, he's cheating again. The Tulip Brothers get a shout out, as does Trantor Dairy and Kikaki Fish, all references to previous films and continuity, so I guess a case could be made for the linking all the films into a unified universe. Ernest regularly breaks all laws of physics, but no one, I guess, notices. And oh no! Ernest's lady interest is in league with the bad guy. He becomes a jerk again, and they get a shot against a major league team, and Ernest basically flies around and no one questions anything or suspects foul play. I mean, the guy's straight up cheating with illegal equipment. He feels guilty, so he fakes an injury, and the clean sweep steps up. Ernest has to come back into the game and makes the game-winning point without the shoes, although they only won the game because they cheated. And I guess the whole thing, this whole movie, was a battle between angels and devils. There was another 2-year gap before we get 1997's Ernest Goes to Africa, which again went straight to video. We start in Africa and then bounce to Ohio, and Ernest is back and he's building his resume again and is a mechanic now, but gets fired. Linda Cash is back as another new character after taking the last movie off, and are those French fries? Are those even cooked? There's a switcheroo, and Ernest gets some African jewels that were stolen, and this guy gets killed by snakes, and I think he's the first person to actually get murdered in an Ernest movie. They send him off to Africa.
It's in the title.
His girl gets kidnapped as well, and hey, what are you insinuating is going to happen here?
You certainly won't be bored.
This one is dark, folks.
Speaking of dark, Ernest disguises himself as a Hindu, and you might ask if he does an offensive accent, and the answer is yes. But more importantly, he darkens his skin, which is just some good old-fashioned lighthearted comedy and not kind of racist in the slightest.
Oh no.
And then Aunt Nelda shows back up for some more non-stop hilarity, and then Ernest talks to African natives like this.
What it is, bro?
Next, these two get their heads crushed by rhinos. I'm not making that up, so I guess kids' movies changed over the courses of 8 movies. I mean, a little later, they have a mangled carcass on screen, so I guess that's cool. They get captured by a cannibal tribe, because of course they are. Ernest and bad guy Thompson have a duel, which he wins and restores the stones, and then they go home, and there's no date in this one, so we'll put it in real time 97, about 1.5 years after the last one. We finally reach the ending of the journey with 1998's Ernest in the Army, which kicks off with a country in the Middle East and American skeletons, so we're still not entirely for kids. Ernest is now at a golf range in Georgia, so he's moved south and got a new job since we've last seen him. Ernest mentions that he was a camp counselor once, which I think is the only mention of another entry in the entire series. He joins the Army Reserves for the sole purpose of driving trucks, and oddly enough, this limo's California license plate has a green registration sticker on it, which was the color of 1996. So it's possible that this is set before Ernest goes to Africa. The reserve group gets sent overseas as an escort, and I guess they just let Ernest wear his regular clothes. There's an evil cat stroking Russian, and Ernest says that he's never been further east than Savannah, which I guess makes sense with this being before the Africa entry. And then he teams up with a young boy to help save an American news reporter. There's a bunch of wackiness and basic Middle Eastern stereotype characters, and then they steal a truck with a huge missile on it. And someone other than Ernest is riding it because, we've already seen that movie.
I kind of feel like I've already seen this movie already, and in fact, I kind of feel like I've already seen it 9 times.
There's betrayal, and they defeat the bad guy, and Ernest actually gets kissed. And that closes the book on the character. It's reported that up to 6 additional Ernest films were in development, including Ernest Spaced Out and Ernest and the Voodoo Curse, although everything came to a halt with the death of Jim Varney in 2000 from lung cancer. In 2012, Son of Ernest was announced, attempting to carry on the character's tradition, but it never came to pass. I'm also excluding any of the other media featuring Ernest, including several television shows and TV specials, mainly because they weren't a part of the film continuity, although, I mean, that's kind of debatable because the films aren't technically even part of the film continuity. But, you know, I watched 9 movies. I'm going to leave it at that.
So there you have it. It's 9 movies. It's 10 if you count Doctorado, but that's not really a canon part of the Ernest film series, although I guess none of them are really canon because they're not really a series. I mean, they're meant to be each film being its own kind of continuity. You could watch any one of them fresh and not have to see any of the others. They very, very, very rarely make reference to anything from any of the other movies. I think there's only 1 or 2 times that they even mention anything from any of the other films. So yeah, it's not supposed to be a solid continuity, but hey, I think that this kind of pieces it together fairly nicely. It does kind of work out if you kind of guess that Ernest just jumps around. He moves from place to place. He's a nomad. He just moves from city to city, takes different jobs, like every year or so, and you know, I think it works. It works out all right. Continuity works as far as the aspect of there is none. And most of these movies, I mean, they're fairly enjoyable. You know, as the series goes on, it gets kind of worse and worse. It starts off decent. I mean, they're pretty dumb movies, but they're at least kind of fun, and then the fun kind of just gets drained and drained. I feel like in the beginning they were kind of trying to tell stories at least a little bit, and have Ernest be a character, and by the ending he's pretty much just a series of cliche jokes that you've already seen over and over again. Ernest Scared Stupid I think will always be my favorite of the bunch. It's the one I kind of remember the most and enjoying, especially because of the Halloween aspect and the practical effects, which were a lot of fun, and I think there'll always be a special place in my heart for Ernest Goes to Camp. But well, that's about it for this week's video. Hope you enjoyed the Ernest movies. Let me know down below what you've thought of these, if you've seen them, which ones you enjoy. If you think that they don't really belong in any sort of continuity, let me know all that. In the meantime, a couple things I want you to check out. One of my friend channels, Carnage Counts, actually did a Carnage count of my movie, The Complex, which you can check out the full movie on my channel down below, or you can check out the Carnage Count channel, Carnage Count video of The Complex on their channel. Also, a couple of great guys from a great channel called Watchtower Database did a video where they tried to tie together a lot of the horror franchises into one solid continuity and one fixed timeline, and they cited me in there and mentioned me in there, so I can go check out that video too as well. So it's actually pretty cool. It's a pretty cool watch. I think you'd enjoy it. But so check those out, and you know, I'll keep on plugging away. Thank you for the patrons. These guys over here, they contribute to the channel, and you can too if you go to patreon.com and help support the channel. But in the meantime, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in a little while for another great video. Thanks, guys.